Chapter 2. My second interview. Official transcripts. Top secret of the U.S. Army Air Force Roswell Army Airfield, 509th Bomb Group. Subject, Alien Interview, 10/7/1947.
Question: why have you stopped communicating?
Answer: no stop. Others, hidden, covered, secret fear.
The alien cannot communicate with them because they were afraid of her or do not trust her. And it is clear to me that the alien is very aware that some people have secret intentions toward her and are hiding their real thoughts. It is equally obvious to me that the alien does not have even a tiny bit of fear of us or anything else for that matter. I pondered the words I chose to convey the meaning of the alien's thoughts very carefully before reporting to the stenographer and the people who were waiting anxiously in the other room. Personally, I never suffered any fear or misapprehension about the alien whatsoever. I was very, very curious and excited to learn anything and everything I could about her and from her. However, like the alien, I did not have much trust or confidence in the agents or authorities who were controlling my interviews. I had no idea what their intentions toward her might be. However, I am sure that the military officers were very, very nervous about having an alien spacecraft and pilot on their hands. At that moment, my greatest worry was how to more clearly understand the thoughts and ideas of the alien. I think that I was doing pretty well as a telepathic receiver, but not as good as a telepathic sender. I wanted desperately to figure out a better way to communicate with the alien, in a way that would enable the growing legion of government officials to understand her more directly, without having to rely on my interpretation of her thoughts. I did not feel very well qualified to act as an interpreter, yet I was the only person with whom the alien would communicate, so it was up to me to get the job done. I was also becoming acutely aware that this was probably the biggest news event in the history of Earth, and that I should be proud to have any part in it. Of course, by that time, the entire incident had been officially denied in the press, and a cover-up of immense proportions by the military and the powers that be had already begun. However, I was beginning to feel the pressure of the responsibility for being the first person on Earth, as far as I knew, to communicate with an extraterrestrial life form. I think I know how Columbus must have felt when he discovered a new world, the size of a continent on one small planet. But I was about to discover an entirely new, unexplored universe. While I waited for my next instructions from my superiors, I went to my quarters, under the escort of several heavily armed MPs. Several other men dressed in black suits and ties accompanied me also. They were still there when I got up in the morning. After breakfast, which was brought to me in my own quarters, they escorted me back to the office at the base that was used for the interview. The third interview, and all subsequent interviews that I had with the alien, were observed and recorded, as I mentioned above, by dozens of other people. Although they were not physically present, a special room had been constructed with a window of one-way glass, through which the interview could be observed from an adjoining room, without intruding on the alien. The alien had been moved into the newly constructed room, and was seated in an ordinary overstuffed living room chair covered with a flowery fabric. I'm sure that someone had been sent into town to buy a chair from the nearest available furniture store. The alien's body was about the same size as a very thin 5-year-old child, so she was dwarfed by the chair. Since her body was not biological, it didn't need any food, air, or heat, and apparently, she didn't sleep either. There were no eyelids or eyebrows above her eyes, so the eyes didn't close. I don't think anyone could tell whether she was sleeping or awake as long as she was sitting upright in the chair, unless she moved her body or gestured with her hand. It would be hard to tell whether she was even alive or not, unless you could perceive her thoughts. Eventually, I learned that the alien was not identified by her body, but by her personality, so to speak. She was known by her fellow aliens as Airl. This is the closest word I can use to describe the name using the English alphabet. I sensed that she preferred the feminine gender. I think we shared a natural, female empathy and nurturing attitude toward life in each other. I am sure she did not feel comfortable with the combative, aggressive, domineering attitude of the male officers and agents, each of whom was more concerned with their own personal self-importance and power than with discovering the secrets of the universe. When I entered the room, she was very pleased to see me. I felt a very genuine sense of recognition, relief, and a warm feeling from her. It was like the eager excitement and unconditional platonic affection one feels from a dog or child, yet with calm and reserved control. I must say that I was surprised that I felt the same sort of affection for the alien being, especially since we had spent so little time with each other. I was pleased that I was able to continue my interviews with her, in spite of all the attention it was getting from the stream of government and military people arriving at the base. It was very obvious that, after I explained what I thought were the reasons for the no-answer answer to the intelligence agents, there was a great deal of upset and turmoil. A very heated discussion took place between some of the intelligence officers, military officials, psychologists, and the language interpreters. This lasted for several hours. It was finally decided that I should be allowed continue to interview the alien, provided I could get a satisfactory answer from her to the following question. Question: what assurance or proof do you require from us that will make you feel safe enough to answer our questions?
Answer: only she speaks, only she hears, no others. Must learn, know, understand.
When I returned from the interview room to report the alien response to this question, I received a grim and skeptical reception from the assembled intelligence agents and military personnel. They could not understand what the alien meant by this. I admitted that I couldn't really understand what she meant either, but I was doing the best I could to articulate her telepathic intentions. I told the officials that perhaps the communication problem had to do with my inability to understand the telepathic language of the alien clearly enough to be satisfactory. I was so discouraged at that point, I almost felt like giving up. And now, there was even more arguments than before. I was sure I was going to be removed from my position, in spite of the fact that the alien refused to communicate with anyone else, or that no one else had been found who could communicate with her. Fortunately, a very clever fellow named John Newby, who was a Japanese language specialist from the Navy, had an explanation and a solution to the problem. He explained that, first, the problem had very little to do with the inability of the alien to communicate. It had more to do with her unwillingness to communicate with anyone other than myself. Second, in order for any clear, comprehensive communication to happen, both parties needed to understand and communicate through a common language. Words and symbols in language convey very precise concepts and meanings. He said that the Japanese people have a lot of homonyms in their language, which cause a lot of confusion in day-to-day communication. They solve this problem by using standard Chinese characters to write down the exact meanings of the word they are using. This clears up the matter for them. Without a defined nomenclature, communication was not possible beyond the rudimentary understanding between men and dogs, or between two small children. The lack of a common vocabulary of clearly defined words that all parties can use fluently was the limiting factor in communication between all people, groups, or nations. Therefore, he suggested that there were only two choices. I had to learn to speak the language of the alien, or the alien had to learn to speak English. Factually, only one choice was possible: that I persuade Airl to learn English, and that I teach it to her